Hi, everybody, and welcome to Occupy's continuing conferences on electromagnetic radiation and microwave dangers. And we are really going to gear up to the dangers of the wireless technology today. Today's agenda date is 10/8/2015, and this is sponsored by InterOccupy. And today's guests are Dianne Knight of Stay on the Truth and Adjunct Professor Curtis Bennett. And we've spoken to Dianne and we've spoken to Curtis many times, but today they have the floor. They have the floor to let us know about the incredible dangers, the way they see it. And we need to really focus in on what they're saying, because we all know the dangers are there, and I think their approach is one that we have to listen to, or actually the public needs to listen to, and we're going to give them the floor. So with that in mind, I wanted to, let me unmute both Curtis and Dianne. How are you both today? Dianne, how are you?
Doing very well, Sandy, and thank you for this beautiful opportunity.
You're welcome. And Curtis, how are you today?
Listen, always doing well, and looking for this opportunity to answer questions for people. And,
great.
And to answer important questions for people.
Oh, that's even better. Thank you so much. And actually, Dianne and Curtis put this agenda together. So I am going to say that guest facilitator Dianne Knight of Stay on the Truth will be talking with Chief Science Officer, Interprovincial Journeyman Electrician, Red Seal, Building Engineering Technologist, Adjunct Professor for Accredited Medical Education for CME credits, Thermal Radiation Consultant for 35 years. So we have a website of stayonthetruth.com, and so it's a website page which you can always find on our website because we keep the agendas posted here. So one of the first questions we have, and we don't have that many people on the call yet, but I wanted to open up the call short, now, earlier, I guess, than normal, because I know we have a large agenda here. So one of the questions is, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? That's the first question.
100%.
So
absolutely.
Let's do that one. You want to do that? You want me to go? How would you like me to structure this? You want to talk about that?
Can I offer a suggestion here?
Sure.
There's a link on the EMF harm page in Facebook. I'd like everybody to follow along on a web page that I designed for today's call.
Okay, so can we know what that is?
Yes, it's stayonTheTruth.com.
Okay.
Make this a little larger.
/ 2015 / 2015 -10-08 -EMF harm international.php. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do that. And okay. So let's answer the question.
Before we go to, do you swear to state the whole truth? Can we go through the list of 14 questions that I'd like Curtis to address, and then we'll go to the open frame and discussion?
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so the first question again is, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The second question
Actually, that would be the part of the discussion that comes after the presentation.
And here's something important for both of you to know. I've already provided 2 declarations for U.S. courts, so one for Michigan State and one for Oregon, under threat of perjury. And so, that those are there. They're actually linked on that website for people to see, and those are specific to what are your credentials, what are this, and under threat of perjury means go to jail.
Well, definitely.
There's that, but of course I would. But just so you know that I've already done 2, no problem.
Okay, so I'm not sure. I don't see where there is an introductory part here. So
do you see a red box that says Introduction and Rationale for Questions?
No, I don't see that on my agenda notes, unfortunately. Is that on Stay in the Truth?
No, not in your agenda. Yes,
okay.
it is.
It's on that Stay in the Truth link.
Okay, why don't I copy that, and maybe that'll be easier. It's going to be harder for me to bring that up because I'm doing the conference. So I don't think I can. I don't think I can follow that.
I made it easy for you.
Let me see if I can get it.
Made it easy for you. I took all the sections off the Facebook and made them in a chronological order.
I have to go to another browser. I have so many browsers open to do the conference. Let me see if I can get to it. And then
okay. I'll read the first question while you're doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Curtis, could you please explain?
Are we off and rolling now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
good
just
stuff.
substitute for Sandy at the moment.
Okay.
You have a piece on your website. When you read the first 9 pages of the exposure code, the language is alarming and extremely dangerous, pertaining to Safety Code 6 of 2009. And that's question 1 under second positioning from the other guy's shoes. Background material. So you were very, very alarmed when you read that.
Well, 100%. And again, it's really important for people that are listening to this is I am one of just millions of science professionals. This isn't about me. I cannot be anonymous. This pertains to all of you, and all science professionals related to this. My job is looking and isolating problems that we can't see and bringing things back into a code-related issue. So we're very technical, even on building issues. When we report damage through an engineer, it's tied to a code rule. The imaging is tied to a code rule. Everything is a code rule. We don't have personal opinions. Science is that, just like an elevator, just like flying in an airplane. We don't want to see good luck. There's so many science professionals behind the scenes that have been muzzled. They're not supposed to talk about these things. You've got others being ignored. So this was brought to me only because this is specific to my area of expertise with magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields. As an electrical professional, my background is electron flow, heat transfer, and except we get to see it. So every atom and molecule. So that's why I'm explaining this, but it pertains to all of us out there. Sandy, you and I have discussed this many times where this pertains to you as an architect. This has changed the design of your buildings. Here's building code related to that. And, although you guys would have a different code rule in the United States, if I reported that to you in Canada and say, listen, that building's, what they're going to do is going to cause that building to vibrate at high speeds, here's the code rule, listen, you would address it in a heartbeat. So I'm just here. We are a complement. We are sciences. We are the science behind policy, not politics. So this is a very complex issue. And again, when I talk about troubleshooting, here's why this is important for this. One, I'm not a singular person at all. We're part of an amazing international team. Like I said, this is just specific to my area of expertise. So when we were asked to look at Wi-Fi in 2010, here's an example, and it relates to the first 9 pages. When we were asked to look at Wi-Fi, it was specific to children in classrooms being radiated. The parents were complaining, and this in Simcoe County, the parents were complaining, and we were watching, and they were being dismissed. And so just a little bit more digging into that, finding out what the heck is Wi-Fi. As soon as they said, well, here's what we're doing, we've got routers in these classrooms that we're just throwing this radio frequency EMF out over the classroom, and so they can communicate with the laptops, and we avoid those wireless costs. Well, you can't do that because you've effectively put them inside a man-made microwave oven. They are part of the circuit to communicate with that laptop. The EMFs are going through them. So there are real particular reasons you don't do things. So when we heard this, nobody wants a personal opinion. Looking for a code rule. Now, plumbers know this, architects know this, engineers know this, everybody knows this. If from that science-related thing, and everything is about everybody here, keeping us safe, sustainable, the economy rolling, but it has to be done properly. Like I say, we want those planes to fly. So to be asked to look at this, to contact the health authority, which is Health Canada, to be referred to Safety Code 6, which is, listen, the electrical code here, the Canadian Electrical Code is, we're CSA standards, is what it is. So when you expect to look at a human exposure code to this, as an electrical professional, it was absolutely shocking to read that, listen, the purpose of this code is to protect the public. That Health Canada's Safety Code 6 uses the same science standards as the whole entire world. And now here's the part where it just got, and listen, I want to apologize if this is where I sound rude or disrespectful or somehow aggressive, but, this is where a bunch of unqualified people got together and put together a code without even understanding what the hell they were doing, quite frankly. To have the code say the purpose of the code is to protect the public. And then the second sentence 2 of the purpose says to reduce contact and induced currents. That's electrical language for electrocution. And as soon as you talk about induction, it's electrocution. Reduce contact and induced currents. This is what we do to do things safely so people don't get hurt or killed. So even to hear that, you're inducing them. And now just that language, and then to find out they've got a test that's called the specific absorption rate, which means, humans are absorbing this stuff. So then how do you prove it, or what goes on? So here's that part to even hear these guys say the language that they're using is a specific absorption rate, power density, watts. Power density is watts. And here's a horrible thing with this, and again, no disrespect to those that were doing their jobs. This never should have happened in the first place, but it's just horrible with this. So the code says, inducing currents to limit those or reduce those. You don't do that at all, no matter what. Now the next part of the code, actually on page 9, the first paragraph says, since 1999 with the previous code, there have been thousands of studies about adverse health effects from cancers and mutation and DNA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But here's a code that says, but it gets into, imagine this where a code says this, but there's no peer-reviewed science today showing such a thing. And then for these guys, to the second paragraph after they're talking about dismissing thousands of studies, here's the most ridiculous thing in the world to read. The purpose of the code is unintentional stimulation of tissue is to be avoided. Now, walking over a cliff is to be avoided. Stepping in front of traffic is to be avoided. That's engineering language for that's to be avoided. There's no argument. There's no anything. You're not supposed to do this. Okay? And guess what it says? Experimental studies show that it can lead to nerve and muscle depolarization. And again, listen, this is where I'm not a biological professional, so immediately I went to our professionals and other professors and I said, what is a nerve and muscle depolarization? So they talked about, here's this natural process going on of your nerves polarizing and depolarizing, and this intricate relationship between the hormonal and immune systems, and to find out that stimulation of tissue is to be avoided because it triggers your nerves, which will also affect your hormonal and immune systems. Now then you have to say, well, how is it possible in order to, now even when Bailey was cross-examined, in order for people to get hurt, they have to be hit. They have to be hit, just like a gunshot. So you look at the specific absorption rate. Here's a specific absorption rate. All cell phone manufacturers have to submit their phones for that test. And you've seen that plastic head called the Sam Phantom model with a bracket out to the side. holding it half an inch out as per manufacturer's specs. And what they do is they turn on the phone and they measure the power density, and it was highest at the base of the antenna, so they measure into the side of the skull where they think this is heating a localized area. That's why they talk about 1,000 microwatts per square centimeter. Even what they're talking about, their language with this is disgusting because it's just so irresponsible, and it's scientifically ridiculous for them to do this. And here's where, and again, I say this because of this. So Health Canada, here's a code related to this, and then it says this. They dismiss all those studies beforehand because causality and biological plausibility, isn't, they admit that it's not understood. Can you imagine this? We don't know what's causing this, and if we don't know what's causing this, how is it biologically plausible? So then to go and get referred from there, I wanted to talk to the radiation guys. So the radiation guys, and remember this, intentional stimulation of tissue is medical imaging. That's it. Otherwise, in controlled environments, these guys are protected. To get referred to the radiation guys and refer to the Sam Phantom model, and just to say, we're trying to find out causation. We're trying to find out what they did. We want to hear the answers to the code. So to say to him, how many antennas were talking to that cell phone when you did that? What was their orientation, the field's orientation to that model? And he said, we didn't have cell phone antennas on. That's done in a sterile environment because they're testing the phone as an end-use device. The circuit's not hooked up effectively. So they're testing the phone, so it's done in a sterile environment. Now here's where it gets horrible and really just, quite frankly, ridiculous. Because cell phones were, look at the way that cell phone test, now you look at Wi-Fi and smart meters. Wi-Fi was really easy for these guys because they actually talk about this. A chief physicist actually said this, Curtis, the kids aren't holding their laptops next to their head like a cell phone. And so therefore they've got some distance from the laptop, so they're safe, some distance from the laptop. And it's the same thing with the smart meter. They said smart meters are easy. People aren't in their yards standing with their heads to the smart meters, so they've got to be safe. They're inside their homes. They've got good distance from them and everything else. As soon as you say to them, you didn't scientifically incorporate the routers. You didn't scientifically incorporate the grid. You didn't technically do that, which substantiates, here's how the EMFs are hitting people. Causation is this. Oh, you left out the Wi-Fi router, bathing the room, creating that man-made microwave, radiating those children and neurologically interfering with them, and you left that out. And again, these are EMFs that go through people, and quite frankly, it's just inexcusable because here's how they're hit. Now, you read Dr. Goldberg's, and again, this isn't me. Here's talking to this doctor. You have to go and stay in the truth and read what he answered with this because they admit they're neurologically interfering with you. That's the whole purpose of avoiding this stuff. So imagine this, playing around with your electrical system, interfering with you neurologically, where it brought up that question with the Sandy Hook shooting in Connecticut, what makes an autistic boy go crazy and shoot children in the face with an assault rifle. And to have Dr. Goldberg to go into, listen, here are these neuropeptides, and here's what they do, and you've got this very delicate immune, hormonal, and nervous system that's getting this electrical assault. And he said, and he talks about this is just creating he talks how this refers to incoherency.
I have to interrupt you for 1 second, if I could. Can you go through that one more time, just to repeat what you just said about how it affects children in schools and how they can have some sort of an adverse effect psychologically?
Sandy, here. Listen, here's the most important part with this. And again, when people say to me, they go, I've had many people say, Curtis, geez, you're just such an asshole. You just tell people what to do. And I said, we consult for fire departments to make everything better and work with their teams. Run means run. If a fireman comes into where I am and says, you vacate the building, I don't say, hey, what's this all about? We're going. So when I tell you this, Sandy, here's why this is so important. We didn't do this to be nice to people. We are the government. We're the science behind policy and doing those things, and to look at this ridiculous code that says, hey, yeah, we're missing causality and biological plausibility, and once we figure it out, we'll change the code. And imagine this: causality is, oops, you left out the EMF gun, you left out the Wi-Fi router, putting the children in a man-made microwave.
So Dr. Goldberg said something to you, and he mentioned neurological.
Let me read this to you, because here's what I want everybody to listen to with this. Now, we can substantiate. Here's what it is. Even Fortis BC said, Curtis, you can be 20 centimeters away from that smart meter and not be hurt. And I said, are you going to cover 17,000 square kilometers, or 6,564 square miles, which means everybody in every part of the city is being hit. You're being hit. That's how you can substantiate this. Now, here's a quote from Dr. Goldberg, specifically talking about the medical aspects that every medical professional needs to hear. Neuropeptides are the chemical equivalent of a biological communication system linking the nervous, hormonal, and immune systems. When one of these systems is either strengthened or depressed, the other will be affected profoundly. The nervous system is like an on-off switch, in that it turns on that positive-negative relationship of polarization and depolarization you have eloquently referred to numerous times. Once the depolarization process begins, it not only impacts the nervous communication system, but impacts the delicate hormonal and immune systems functioning as well. There are coherent frequencies and incoherent frequencies. The former has innate orderliness, while the latter demonstrates a disorderly state. That's why we refer to someone as incoherent, as being in a state of a disordered state of consciousness. When a coherent bioelectric, listen to this one. When a bioherent bioelectrical pattern becomes disrupted by frequencies that are nothing short of an electrical storm and assaulting the natural rhythms of the body, one's mental faculties become severely compromised. Unfortunately, we're just seeing the beginning of an epidemic of highly dysfunctional and psychopathic behaviors.
Psychopathic behaviors, you're meaning psychopathic behaviors in relationship to the effect of the EMRs affecting the brains of children.
100%. 100%. And imagine this, and the reason why you would never do this, and this is why other professionals have to jump into this. If you're in areas with different power densities, that just means that EMF assault is stronger. And imagine this, we're electrical units. This information as well as O's and 1s, and the bottom line is, you think of people's diet, you think about all the things you talk about with GMOs and pesticides and chemical sensitivities. You've got all these complications to think about, and then you've got this neurological, hormonal, and immune assault on everybody. So it's going to be different, but it's just horrific, and that's what's going on right this second.
So those kids in school who are being contained in a wireless frequency school, for example, or classroom, they are getting what you just mentioned, assaulting their brains to the point that it is making them dysfunctional. And you say instead of pathological, it is, I don't know what you want to call it, but you can't take that kid. You can't
across
take
the board
out of the classroom at that point, and for them to function normally until they take a break from the EMFs and feel a little bit better. But that's not what's happening now. So anyway, I just wanted to put that little in there.
No, here's why you said it. Why this is so important with this. Our work is pertaining to, everybody's heard of big oil companies, Syncrudes and Suncors. Now, troubleshooting, isolating problems before they fail is to avoid explosions, lost production, lost revenues, lost income, lost everything. We're there to make the process work. Everybody knows that, Sandy. You know that as an architect. Here's a group of people, and here you are administering this project, but it's scientifically designed. Everybody does their thing and gets together. Now imagine this for this. As soon as these guys don't incorporate the routers and the antennas, and listen, I say this without malice. This is the same way for these guys. Listen, I don't care who you are, your own families. It is what it is. As soon as you incorporate the antennas, the routers, and the smart grid into it, you've immediately got causation. 100%. Imagine going into a courtroom and a judge looking at the plastic head versus electromagnetic fields and electricity and biology. Now imagine this, Sandy, and this is what makes me want to throw up. The plastic head, you know why they say biological plausibility is missing? The plastic head doesn't have any biology. They can radiate that sucker forever, and it's in a sterile environment. And guess what? It is so scientifically ridiculous that this thing doesn't have eyeballs. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a brain wave. You know those dummies they crash into. Those dummies they crash into. They put them in cars, and the car manufacturers, the engineers do the test. They hook up the dummies to see the impact. This test on safety is a cup of water in a microwave.
Okay, I got to ask you this question. I know that we have talked about this plastic head, and I also know that both you and Dianne are so, I don't know the right word for it. I mean, upset is a very calm word for the fact that this is happening in so many situations all around the grid.
No, you got to.
So what was the trigger for you, Curtis? What triggered you off?
Well, the trigger for me, the trigger immediately.
To be able to get so horrified when you came to that enlightened state of this can't be. This is suicide. This is homicide. What was the breaking point for you?
Well, it was immediate, and here's why that's important. As soon as you go to the code, now here again is a shameful thing because, you know, imagine this code going on for decades, and they were missing causality and biological plausibility, and the only reason that happened is they didn't invite the right people to participate in this, the right technical people. So they just got into this ridiculous analogy of let's get this plastic head with water in it because humans are made out of water, their babies are made out of water. There was no considerations of that electrical interaction and interference.
Let me ask you something. I got to ask you this. Do you think that at this point, with your analogy, that the people that you are trying to reach with to educate them, that this is finally hitting home by saying this? Do you think that they don't realize this by now?
Sandy, here's the sad part, and here's why I say this. When people say, and even Dianne, when she, you know, and bless Dianne for the hard work she's done in this as well, putting things together. And people say, well, you know, you and Dianne are buddies and whatever. Dianne and I have never met. So, you know, here's what's really important for people. There are so many science professionals behind the scenes, Sandy. You know that as an architect. You know, people that don't get talked about. It's part of this incredible team. And you know, when it comes to these issues here, when we get into specific trouble, you know, they give this to parts of our team. You know, here, you know, when you're a thermal radiation consultant, it pertains to all atoms and molecules in existence, quite frankly. And so you can see these different disturbances with anything above absolute zero. You can there's no such thing as what they call non-thermal effects. So as soon as we got into the code-related issues, and this immediately, Sandy, here is the horrible part. September 14th of 2010, you know, causation of biological plausibility was reported to Health Canada as our authority having jurisdiction. It's really important for people to listen to this and write this down because Canada screwed you over, and you know, and that's a Canadian. I should say this. I don't want to say Canada, politics, and these guys are just going to have to reap what they've sown because here's the reality. technically, and Sandy, you can appreciate this and even explain this to people that, hey, all of a sudden something's been found out, there's a code rule change, that's it. Because the code says this, we're going to protect the public. As soon as we get peer-reviewed science showing that this causes harm, we're going to change the code. And so instead of when causation and biological plausibility was reported, well, guess what? You left out the routers and antennas, causality. Biological plausibility, you left out all the biological information of everything. So there you have biological plausibility. You have to change the code, which means that, listen, these frequencies as applied would be illegal. You got a trade-off. You can kill people, damage the infrastructure, cause trillions of dollars of damage, be hanged for your crimes, or listen, we just can't do this. No.
So what you're saying is that the code, the way they've written it now, precludes the important elements that you're trying to bring home over and over again. You didn't do it the way we need to do it in order for you to have a legal reference point. And that because you didn't proceed the right way, millions of people are going to be killed and they're going to be maimed. And as a result of that, you need to go to jail because you're not really for the people any longer.
So, Sandy, here's a reality, and listen, you know this from an engineering standpoint, an architecture standpoint. Listen, engineering's engineering. It is what it is. You can't change your mind no matter what you think with these issues. Now, our job, troubleshooting for industries over 35 years and catching problems ahead of time, is specific to saving money, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in lives. Imagine being blessed to be part of pioneering infrared for the police search and rescue use in all over the world, saving hundreds of billions of dollars, fire departments, all this, and insurers at the same time, architects at the same time, engineers at the same time, everybody.
Everybody's going to say they thought they had the right rules and regulations. But you're trying to alert everybody you don't have the right rules and regulations. These laws are not correct.
Here's Sandy. Here's the thing for big industry. And again, when people go, listen, you can appreciate this when we're in these big industrial environments and you're doing these inspections under full load and lumber mills and very dangerous environments. You can be crushed and killed, and no means no. Stop means stop. And when we tell these guys, listen, you got to shut this down. It doesn't matter what industry it is, you got to shut it down. So, and the point is with this, being the science behind policy, our job was, you Sandy, you know this as an architect, our job is to report to and through the authority having jurisdiction on the fact that here is causation, here is biological plausibility, here's what you are missing. Now, here's why I want people to understand this isn't about Curtis Bennett, because this is how powerful this process is, supporting you today. So September 14th, 2010, causality is found and reported to Health Canada. Now, that's the government of Canada. October 28th, 2010, Canadian Parliament Standing Committee on Health had me as an expert witness reporting causality and biological plausibility to Canadian Parliament Standing Committee on Health related to this issue. And so, even they said, I said, can you guys make me testify? And they said, do we have to? And I said, no, of course not. But imagine this, again, saying this. The peer-reviewed science is called electricity, engineering, biology, name a science. It is what it is. It's just so ridiculous. And again, even with schools, and this is a little touchy for me because, listen, I appreciate professionals and people in schools are doing those things. But guess what? My education comes from schools. What are they doing teaching electrical programs in schools and then using Wi-Fi and putting those children in a man-made, and instructors and everybody else in a man-made microwave oven? It's going through you. It's doing all of these things. Imagine this. It's doing this physically to you. Never mind these high-speed oscillations, billions of times. Wi-Fi at 2.45 gigahertz would mean, on top of inducing currents, these electromagnetic fields are expanding and collapsing inside your children their bodies from head to toe 4.9 billion times per measurable second. Sandy, you imagine to buildings where they said, Curtis, this isn't affecting buildings. I said, is it going through the walls? And they said, yes. And I said, it's going through the material, the fire separations. Yes. I said, it's causing vibrations 4.9 billion times per second. I said, you can't shake a building like that. I said, it's not designed for it. And so here's that horrible part. Now here's what's important with what you guys have supporting you, because as soon as that was reported through a Canadian Parliament Standing Committee on Health, immediately the most advanced medical program in the world came forward, and they said, listen, I said, listen, here's this problem related to radio frequencies. Here's what's going on. Here's what they missed. And they said they missed all this, and I said, listen, they just didn't invite the right people. I said, you can't have PhDs talking about EMFs. It's an electrical interaction. And when I say electrical interaction, electricians' education uses the periodic table. Everything in existence, we're really brighter and harder working than we look when people see us with a light bulb or something. But here's why this is important again. We didn't report this even to be nice to people. If you could electrocute people and make money at it, hey, we'd be good at it because we'd have a lead. But here's the reality. This was reported to them specific to the liabilities. You can't electromagnetically induce currents into children, interfere with them neurologically, and then grade them on their intelligence. And imagine this, and I want to get into this with a medical program. So as soon as the medical program, they said, Curtis, you have to justify something before anything gets lectured medically. It goes in front of a medical committee before they say, okay, we're accepting that lecture to be lectured for continuing education credits. So between October 28th, 2010 and January 7th and 8th, 2011, here's Dr. Ronald Lynch, a toxicology and environmental specialist related to this, especially chemical sensitivities. Toxicity was a big thing we were working on, early detection of breast cancers, et cetera, et cetera. And through him and the Integrative Health Forum and their 14,000 licensed professionals, January 7th and 8th of 2011, the dangers of these technologies and causality was biological plausibility was lectured in medical education for education credits required for ongoing medical licensing. Now, when you think about this, and listen, when I say it's not about Curtis Bennett, it was after the fact that the health education administrator said, Curtis, you've got to change your credentials. And I said, I got enough going on. And she said, did you know what you're doing with that program? And I said, no. And she said, you better take a look at this. And I said, I'm a professor type dude. And she said, without the pay. But here's that important part with this. This is a group of 14,000 licensed health professionals that put on education programs that as medicine evolves. So this is applicable to millions of health professionals if they choose to take that program. But it's applicable to every health professional in the United States and Canada as far as causality goes. But guess what utilities didn't do? Here you imagine those children are in school right now. And they're in school, they're, symptoms from head to toe, and of course they write them off when it hits their toe because, you're not laying on the smart meter or whatever the case may be. It's so ridiculous. But you can imagine people going to the doctor and saying, listen, I've got this tinnitus, I've got this tachycardias, I've got these things going on, and doctors not even have been informed properly about this assault. They weren't consulted or informed on this radiation issue. They were not informed, or nobody told them. It was, during a utilities application that we found out that the government's allowed these guys to bypass regulatory process to expedite issues. So guess what? They've just started rolling this horror story out. But the worst part is, guess what? Do this.
I think that what you're saying is very important, and people in the general public should listen to this conference call and get educated by what you're saying, because it is an emergency. And also, Dianne, I'd like you to sort of chime in, if you can, about why you think this is such an emergency, and with Curtis's assistance. You keep saying we don't have time, and you keep saying that this is such an emergency, and we're saying all of us are saying we need to take baby steps because the public is not going to become aware of all the trauma that we all know is going to happen. So we have to educate them.
No. You know, listen. Here's what you got to tell people with that. Let's take New York as an example. You know, the planes are flying towards the towers, and let's take baby steps because the public isn't educated about planes hitting buildings and causing those catastrophes. And this is again, Sandy, when I'm talking specific to my credentials. Guess what? We didn't tell industry, you know, you can't do this so we can sing songs and have a difference of opinion. They're going to be sued to extinction because you're right, they're wrong. If the shoe was on the other foot, I'd tell people to quit your whining. But here's the thing is, it's illegal now. The damage is measurable by the second. It doesn't matter if it's transmitting once a day. The damage is measurable by the second. So you ask a doctor, oh, doctor, one, they've misdiagnosed people, and the damage is measurable by the second. That you can calculate this, that my hormonal and immune and other systems are being thoroughly compromised. My goodness, you can't do this. If this were done in a military application, I'll tell you what, it would be an act of war. You can't do this and use it for communication.
Dianne, did you have something to add to this?
Yes, I was asking a mother, I didn't know who she was. What about microwaving your child? And she just had the most horrific response. I would never microwave my child. And they don't know.
So you're saying this is an emergency. How do you think? I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
It's as urgent as if a little one accidentally stood in front of the stove and touched the red-hot burner. There is no number of seconds it is safe.
How much electrocution? Right.
I understand.
How much electrocution would people want their baby to have?
Dianne, did you have something to
You got to think about this. These dummies left out the radiation device, and guess what? It's called wireless communication, but it is in fact electromagnetic radiation used to electromagnetically induce everything in the circuit, which is, imagine Fortis. All the people, everybody in every town, not just what they call sensitive, the ecosystems, the trees, affecting every science. Listen, there's nothing worse in the world you can do. This is why creation, whatever that people want that to be, used a magnetic field. And you know, in atoms and molecules, for us, listen, like I said to Dianne, we don't have North Korean atoms and molecules, or Russian or Iranian, or Muslim or Christian. You know, it's this is the true language of creation for what it is. Atoms and molecules. It's pure science. You can't do this. It's illegal now. They were warned specific to the liability. Ask a lawyer. Just ask a lawyer.
I understand all that you're saying, both of you. We see this as such an emergency. We perceive all the incidences we see around the kids doing, and we perceive it on buses, and we all know when we see this, we are horrified. All those who are educated about this subject are horrified to see this. But if you walk over and say and pull out somebody's Wi-Fi, or you try to stop them from doing this, they're going to get really, really upset with us. So what we've been trying to do, how can we tear apart what the system is that's being built right now, even though it is so dangerous? How can we utilize your knowledge base to make that so apparent to these people to stop doing this to their children and to themselves?
Okay, I want. Listen, here's an experiment that everybody can do. Okay, Sandy?
Okay.
I want you to tase your mother. Tase the neighbor. Tase the neighbor. I want you to call the police and say, listen, there's somebody tasing me across my property line. What would the police do? Look, in some states, listen, this is a horrible thing, and I don't want it. And guess what? In some states, listen, if somebody comes to your door with the intent of doing trouble, you know, people have used lethal force, and but guess what? If you said to the police, and this is what this is, just because the police don't understand it, Sandy. Now, these guys admit they left out, we left out the antennas and those things like this. When you say to a policeman, here's what people just did here where I am, where they said, we're being ignored, we're being dismissed, it's a civil matter. I said, assault with a deadly weapon is not a civil matter, not just a civil matter. And I said, the same way they cannot tase you across a property line, you cannot blast highly penetrating frequencies across people's property lines into their buildings and into their bodies. It's an assault, and this is an assault with. You heard what this can do to you. Go to the doctor and say, Doc, their nervous, hormonal, and immune systems aren't working. What do you think is going to happen? And I've just said to doctors, I've said, dead. What the heck is what's the outcome of this?
Well, let me ask you this then.
So here's the thing: is you've got the law on your side now.
What in the world?
Even for towers.
Why are they doing this then? Why are they not listening? You think they understand? Why are they doing it?
No, this is because they're doing it for communication, and you got dirty politics. Canada didn't do their job. Yeah, this should have. Here, imagine this. The World Health Organization came out with a report May 31st, 2011, saying cell phones carcinogenic, possibly carcinogenic, and they put that word possibly in it. If Canada had done their job in 2010, the fall before, and taken it to the World Health Organization, they left out. Imagine this: they're possibly carcinogenic, but they left out the antennas.
Okay.
Well, geez, the phone doesn't work without the antenna.
Okay. Education can be very difficult if we know that what's happening in this world is the radiation is killing everybody and everything and destroying everything. So when you see a kid who has braces on and you know those braces are going to affect that kid tremendously going into a school and sitting there with Wi-Fi, I mean, our reaction is horrifying, right? What are we going to tear those braces off that kid? What are we going to do? What are we going to do when we see this? What are we going to do to be able? I mean, we have to always have plans of actions and be able to deal with these issues.
Sandy, here's a good one for you.
I don't know what we can do. I mean, I see this too.
Sandy, I know
I feel exactly the way you do. I'm horrified. I feel it too.
Sandy, I bet you that you know exactly what to do and could do it immediately.
I mean, no, I can't.
I
have to get out of the environment because I know that I'm going to have problems.
How long were you an architect for?
I've been since 79, I guess. 78.
Okay. Now here's just a simple question for you. Do buildings have to comply with building code?
The building code that is existing, yes.
Okay, but they have to comply with building
code that should be written to protect people when new technologies come about, that it has to be changed to.
Well, you're right. And here's another question for you. What if Sandy the architect, if they said, Sandy, you can't do that. You can't do it. You can't build like that. It's not compliant with code. And Sandy said, screw you guys. I'm not going to tell these guys. We're going to build the way I want. What would they make you do? They'd make you do it again.
Yeah, you can't do it.
They'd make you do it again. Well,
yeah, they would arrest you. Take away your license.
Well, and Sandy, here's the most important part with this. This is my area of expertise, and you know what? When the code says you can't stimulate tissue because you'll cause nerve and muscle depolarization, and you'll also affect their ability to reproduce, and all the horrible things that the Barry Trowers and the other reporting professionals talk about. All this information does is it's electrically substantiating the reality. So when people are saying, no, these frequencies can't hurt you, listen, they can like it all they want. They better truly understand what they're doing to their bodies, that they're inside the wire. And there's no bright side to this. It's the equivalent of, getting kicked in the testicles billions of times a second. And the mutation. And listen, mutation's a reality. You don't do that. So it substantiates all those studies.
You don't do a lot of things. We have some questions or some people who want to add to this conference. Can I call on some people?
But just one thing, and Sandy, I want to bring it back to what you just said. The laws are already there. You can't do this. You can't blast this through buildings because you'll cause it to vibrate. Here's the code rule across Canada. And you know this, whether you might say, hey, listen, I don't understand that, but we're going to dig into it. But that's the code rule. When it says you can't vibrate a building, it means you can't vibrate a building. And these guys
I
did this.
understand your point, and it's well taken. It's well taken by the fact that you can't do something that is illegal and it's against the quote-unquote laws, the general laws, so that they are, in effect, they're not living by the laws. And so, but they are the lawmakers, too. So I don't know, we're going chicken and egg here, but we understand your point. All of us do. And I do understand.
You're not going chicken and egg because there's nobody that can do laws to kill people.
They can't.
And I can say that no legislature can change the laws of physics.
Well, you can't. This is what I mean. And don't forget this too. These guys politically are doing this nonsense. It's not the laws supporting them for a second. It's their political arrogance that's got them into this mess.
Okay.
Illegal is illegal.
Like you
can't do this and go. And again, asking a lawyer. Listen, I asked a lawyer this. I said, what's genetic mutation of a girl's eggs worth in a lawsuit? What's the right or the ability to reproduce worth in a lawsuit? I don't say that because here's something to think about. Here's that reality and that liability. You can't radiate. Look at Washington State. Their elected officials asked for a document on what Wi-Fi is going to do to their schools, and they have 1 million students. I said, imagine this: subtly electrocute 1 million students and the liability associated with, as well as.
Well, I can understand how horrified you are. And Dianne, I can understand how horrified you are too. But I do have to ask some people to join in for this conference, and we do have a few hands up. Like Roberta, how are you today? Did you want to add something to this conversation?
Yes, thank you, Sandy. I really have to say I'm glad you invited Curtis back because I think when we heard him, I guess it was about a month ago, it was a real eye-opener for me. And Curtis, I have to say, last time you went completely over my head. I felt overwhelmed. And I thank you today that you've really made some, well, I'm a college professor in art therapy, part-time now, and you gave us today what I think are bullet points, and they're really important. And I want you to know who I am, Curtis. I'm the wife of Jim Beal, whom you may or may not have heard of, but he's a retired NASA engineer who became electromagnetically sensitive when he invented a new way to weld aluminum for the external tank that carries the space shuttle up. So he is one of the few rare men. They say they're just 15% of the people of men who are EMF sensitive, and I knew him when he was coming out of that condition, and I have seen him, have had people call him literally from around the world based on his website because he is as passionate as you are to get the word out. And in the 90s, he was asked to create a document by the research division of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, founded by an astronaut who's aware of the electromagnetic problems because they had to study them as they would affect the astronauts, of course, when they were sending them in space and out of the Earth's natural EMF field. So he was commissioned to write a document looking back as far as he could go, and it's over 100 years, and it's hundreds of years actually, that electromagnetics have been used for healing. And he met with and worked with Dr. Robert Becker, whom I'm sure you're aware of, who talked about the perils and the promise of using electricity and how it would harm and how it could heal. And I'm sure you're aware. You are therefore, in my mind, you are the current trumpet, the current person who, with a real depth of experience, not only has shared with us today, but has shared with the Canadian government and also with two of the professions that I think are prime movers in helping us human canaries, those of us who are electromagnetically sensitive and can go into a restaurant. And fortunately, I have a husband I can turn to and say, I don't want to stay here. I can feel this is a bad environment, and he'll agree with me. And we can turn around and go out and go to another restaurant or whatever the situation is in society. So the timeline I see you in is that you are the current trumpeter, if I may use that phrase, if you don't mind. Much as there were men who were doing studies of the harm of EMF fields, certain frequencies of EMF fields, like Dr. Ross Adey. Are you familiar with his work?
No.
Dr. Ross Adey died in the late 90s, and he is part of the hundreds of articles that the doctors that you are referring to, he's part of the flow of literature that has attempted to document the harm of EMFs, as Dr. Robert Becker. I'm sure you're familiar with Bob Becker's work in New York.
And again, I want to apologize when you make references even to yourselves or other people, other professionals on this. Quite frankly, listen, we're just so technical on everything we have to do, no matter what, that even hearing from these guys that that people hadn't been informed properly, their work was dismissed. They were ignored because the specific absorption rate didn't support it. We could radiate the plastic head with water in it. They can't even measure the temperature of their water they calculate. It is so ridiculous to even think of that thing as science.
I think your frustration, and I have heard it in 2 phone calls, and I went to your website, and your website is very generous, and I see you testify. We live in Texas, and I see you testify before a public utility commission, so you have even made a difference in our state from what in some people's mind in Texas is far away Canada, but we actually have given papers in Canada, and we appreciate the Canadians are ahead in many ways of the United States. And the fact that you have straddled the national boundary between Canada and the United States, and you are helping our doctors learn how to identify it. You know of the doctor in Dallas, Texas, Dr. Bill Ray, who was considered crazy by his colleagues for about the first 20 years that he ran a medical conference.
He got into that through chemical sensitivity, and he just backed into it because you have the two together.
Yeah, that's Jim Beal, my husband, the retired NASA engineer. So what I want to do
thank him for his work.
Thank you.
Well, we could thank him. We actually have an architect friend here in Austin who says Bill Ray himself is becoming an old curmudgeon and is not even listening to his architects. And I think people who, like I had breakfast, fortunately, with Bob Becker once. Jim and I were there, and he came and sat with us, and I met him. And Curtis, I don't want you to feel some of the frustration that I know Bob Becker felt. He told us about it, and I know Bill Ray is experiencing, because I think you have been a valiant trumpeter in an army of people who have been public guardians, who have tried to wake people up.
I had one comment here I wanted to add in to verify what you were talking about, the increase in murders by individuals, usually off the rocker to begin with. What's happened, there's an issue of Wired magazine within the past 12 months about guns, and they have a listing going back in about the mid-90s up to about 2014, showing the increase in these kind of atrocities that we're witnessing every day almost in the papers about what's going on in the schools and this kind of thing. And there's somewhere I read, perhaps your last talk or somewhere, that some portion of the brain is affected. The behavioral mechanisms in the brain are affected. I don't know exactly where that is, but
judgment is affected. The frontal lobe.
Yeah, and
well, Jim, you think about this with what you just said, and again, here's this one, this education for me, because here's Joan Moffat. She teaches biology to medical professionals at universities. So I'm listening to her talk to the wireless guys on this, and here's what she said. Imagine this. We know that they're talking the specific absorption rate, which is electromagnetic induction. We know they're inducing currents, so volts is equal to amps times resistance. You're increasing cellular voltage. And for Dr. Moffat to say increasing cellular voltage 0.2 microvolts, millionths of a volt, changes white blood cells. Increasing it 0.4 millionths of a volt changes mood. And then, Jim, you think about this is because, it's not just, here's your power density and here's this induced current. Those electromagnetic fields are expanding and collapsing, and you're going to have these inrush currents that just have to be playing electrical hell. And who knows what they're doing with mood or, and even imagine this, I've said this to, and I can't even figure out an interpretation because Stephen King couldn't think about this. Computer language is binary language. It's O's and ones, O's and ones.
Yeah.
So you've got the children in a classroom. Not only are they being used as part of an electrical circuit, these very electrical beings are processing O's and ones, O's and ones. It doesn't matter whether it's pornography or the Bible. And how does their body interpret these movies? Interpret these movies, genocides and whatever. They've got to be. How are they electrically processing that while they're being interfered with? Does it cause instability? You would think it's got to just do something horrible.
One thing you need to know is AD has a wonderful chart somewhere in the late 1990s showing that intensity is not always the problem. It can be extremely low, as we have with the geoelectromagnetics and birds and bees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's the information content that's in the message that's coming through, and the microwave helps get it inside that in the magnetic fields. So he shows a very small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that causes changes. I don't know, lab animals or people or what, but it certainly has been good in my talks.
I want to interrupt you two gentlemen just a minute because you're starting to get rather technical, and I wish you all would talk on the phone to one another because I think you could reinforce one another's information, but you're starting to get to the technical level where my eyes start to glass over.
Got it.
So
I've got to say this is that I think sometimes I'm wanting to listen to some of that technical stuff. Maybe not now, but in the future. So, we need to know this.
That's what I mean.
People who are listening to this call
complex.
will have to know the technical aspects for them to believe this.
Yeah, well, Sandy, maybe it would be wise to have a discussion between Curtis Bennett and Jim Beal, just asking, because I have been aware when you do open your questions like this that you have a very bright audience.
Yeah.
And it's Jim's experience that the people who have called us in for electromagnetic house, home, and property assessments, and by the way, in the last 3 weeks, with all these earth changes going on, we have had more telephone calls from around the country, literally, than we have ever had in the 25 years that I've been aware of Jim Beal doing this work. They've come in the last, and I think that's several things. I think it's the earth changes. I think it's a better informed public. Most of the people now calling us have bought their own meters.
Yeah.
And Sandy, I don't know if they're listening to your program or they're reading Curtis's website or they know about the 200 doctors petitioning the World Health Organization, the International EMF Alliance that Dianne told us about last week. I looked that up. But I did want to make one comment. And
Before you do that, since we're on the topic and I like to promote people's great work, how do they contact Jim or you?
Oh, well,
Internet.
Jim has a website, EMFinterface.com.
Yeah, it needs upgrading, but not much has changed in the past 5 years.
Yeah, Curtis is right. And with the quote, if Dianne, if I may quote you today, you had a wonderful quote. It said, "No legislature can change the laws of physics."
Yep.
And
100%.
that's a very powerful. What I love about you, Dianne, and Curtis is you come up with quotable quotes that before people's eyes gloss over, or to get their attention, I can put out one of your quotes, like, "Do you want to put your kids in a microwave field of a classroom?" And those kind of statements get people's attention. So this is what I wanted to say, and then I have a question for you. We listened to Lloyd Burrell the hour before this one, Sandy, and I can see why you have trouble getting him on your hour, because his hour from France is an hour before. And Dave Stetzer was interviewed today, and this is what Dave Stetzer said, your neighbor just over the border in Wisconsin. He said, the standards are there, the laws are there, and they need to be enforced. So my perception is that Sandy's audience are some of those potential enforcers, and all of us who are willing to be human canaries who have experienced the sensitivity. I am one willing to get out with the wonderful phone interview Sandy had 2 weeks ago of women who are creating incredible legislative action in the state of Massachusetts. I think Dianne was on for that one. And so I want to become socially active. So I want to hear what 2-page handouts I can put out on a table at my local farmers market on Wednesday afternoons and help my unusually enlightened community, my neighborhood, my little village of Wimberley, to inform people here to the degree that they are willing or able to hear what is, as Sandy said, I agree with Sandy's phrase, this is horrifying news. So what do you all recommend? What handouts or what?
I think what affects people the most is when you tell them this. And Sandy can, again, you guys can attest to this. When we inspect buildings, we'll get called to look at. It doesn't matter if it's a high rise. It can be, just incredible properties, whatever. In order to get a mortgage, for it to be occupied, for it to be insured, it has to be compliant with building code. There is no exception to that rule.
Developments here, we are trying to educate the real estate agents too. So bring them on over here. These people from Switzerland and Israel and other places are coming in to close, shut out. With the big expensive developments are coming in here, and we're being sure we got as many people around as possible when we do our inspection.
Well, you know what you're gonna, and again, here's that issue with this. As soon as they said, okay, we left out the antennas. Well, then right away, Jim, you can appreciate this as well, that you get into these issues where, what's the range of that antenna? What's the range of this? You need that technical information. And when they say that, oh, here we're covering these large geographical areas, like Fortis, BC said, we're going to cover the equivalent of 6,564 square miles, you're inducing everything, which means you're also hitting buildings. And if you're hitting buildings, I said, guess what? I said, you guys, you can't do that. You can't hit buildings with this. And they said, well, we can. So when I said, you're using a human exposure code that's got nothing to do with it. I said, those EMFs going through those walls will cause it to vibrate at high speed. Here's the code rule. You can't do that. And that's what I mean with this. We're warning them that, listen, insurers are not going to pick up the liability. When your building can't be sold anymore, there's your investment gone. Your little Picasso is going to be just shaken into dust because, imagine this, Jim. Here's our area right here, under cross-examination by me, and this is transcripts of the BC government with experts under oath. This is a legal precedent for you guys, for these guys to admit, yes, we're going to cover 17,000 square kilometers. So imagine a 17,000 square kilometer microwave oven. Bees, birds, bugs, trees, what the heck ever. They told nobody, they informed nobody, and here's the thing is, it's not that they can do that. They didn't tell their insurers. They didn't tell their engineers. They didn't tell their engineers who are insured for errors or omissions.
Well,
Imagine, this is another reason why we warn them. As we said, even yesterday, I dealt with a municipality, and he said, "Curtis, that's not our jurisdiction." I said, "Who administers building code?" He said, "I do." He said, "We do." He said, "I'm the building inspector." I said, "How did they use a plastic head and a human exposure code to bypass you?"
Very good point.
And he said, "What are you talking about?" Well, guess what? They didn't inform them. Jim, imagine working for NASA and the incredible work that you guys do, and one department, for whatever reason, says, listen, this design's just not going as fast as we like. Let's change it a little bit and not tell anybody.
Sounds like what Volkswagen just did.
Yeah, and you
like,
just...
But you have a parallel now, corporate parallel with Volkswagen. Volkswagen did certain things in a test that showed positive, but when they went to production, they put in a different mechanism of whatever type, and it's brought down the credit. You know about that case now.
Yes.
Affecting their credibility.
Look at the towers. You cannot sue the towers for human health, so they're picking up the visibility of these towers, ruining the aesthetics is one thing. And there's a little bitty phrase, supposedly, I haven't looked, tried to find it, in the instruction manual for every cell phone. It says, keep it away from your head. And we're starting to see calcium degeneration in young people as far as the jaws are concerned, because they're sleeping on the blooming things. And I've had a couple of dentists, top dentists, come to me for advice on this. And I say, they're sleeping on their iPads. And that's calcium depletion. And you go to Becker and look at the work he did with calcium repletion, I guess you'd call it, and bone knitting and stuff like that. Also, Dr. Paul is talking about a form of calcium that's pretty important in staying healthy or submitting to electrical hypersensitivity. So we're starting to see these relationships finally.
That's great. I wanted to add somebody else to the conversation. Lynn in Maryland, did you have something to add? I know you had your hand up.
Hi, Sandy.
Right.
I thought I'd put my hand back down. I actually look at this like a diet, or like when people, I've been a raw vegan at times, and transition is usually easiest when you do it abruptly. That's my experience. The bottom line here is, how much time do you think we have? The whole thing is, it's like, and I really appreciate Curtis and Dianne. And you know what? If you have to shake people up, so be it. The thing is, this isn't just about cell phones and tablets. And there is a direct link to the pulse frequency and mind control. Now, this is being done on a massive scale. There are psychopaths running the world or something. I mean, it is so big at this point, it's unreal, because when we talk about the telecommunication industry, again, we're not just talking about cell towers. I saw this article and I did print it off, but and actually I have the information. I came across it. I know where it is. It was a 400 and some page document from 86, a compilation of studies and government. It was a government document, probably military, and it had to do with using aerosols in the atmosphere to propagate radio signals. Okay. So the telecommunications industry probably has everything to do with the entire global economy. It has everything to do with every country's military at this point, because you have satellites and weaponry and all sorts of stuff. We, the people, have the power, except that the technology is probably being used against us. When it comes to kids going and shooting things up, that's abnormal. Now, we're not going to regulate the government having guns, but let's always pull out that we have to take the guns away from the average person. So much for constitutional rights. Along with, you can only go to arbitration with your new chip-encrypted credit card. So there goes your civil right to a jury trial, unless you want to disagree with it. The problem in the United States is that we have this little 5-person commission that supposedly runs everything with wireless. And they have tried every which way but Sunday to take any rights of the people away to protest. But on top of that, they don't protest. They can't put down their phone, their tablet, their router. So the bottom line is, I don't know. And the thing about mind control is, I remember Barry Trower talking about this because I'd actually remembered it happening, that guys were coming back from the Middle East. They were stationed down in North or South Carolina, and they were going berserko. And finally, some guy brutally murdered his wife in a domestic thing. And it was just so abnormal. And Barry Trower actually heard it, contacted the base, because these guys were pilots and their helmets had wireless communication in them. And Barry realized that the frequency was set wrong and it had rewired their brains. Well, if you listen to people who are targeted, they're also having problems, all kinds of problems. It is not hard to beam somebody with frequency, and you can look at the range of what pulse frequency can do, from broken bones and nausea to being curled up in a ball crying, or being depressed and not know what's wrong with you, to after a while just getting breast cancer or something. They don't have to put chips in your brain and wires to do brain control. Delgado perfected that long ago. Oh, and the other thing is, those and ones, technology's bypassed those and ones. They're so far past those and ones that isn't funny. And that's the thing. Well, we know if this technology has bypassed anything, and honestly, I don't believe 90% of these shootings and weird things, they're false flags. I guarantee you, and I know, James Holmes didn't shoot anybody in that movie theater in Colorado. Now, I don't know about all the others, but I would imagine 90% of them are false flags. And the people who probably are going to get put to death, or, the government, or once you start investigating stuff, you just end up dead or hurt. That's what we're dealing with, and people are just unaware. And I think Curtis is right, and I really appreciate them, because if you don't shake people up, they don't even think about it.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to say this, that it's really amazing to take it from what we're talking about, Lynn, you brought it into a wider perspective. Thank you. But it's so clear that that's true. Thank you. Go ahead.
Jim, here's something. Jim, here's something for you to think about with this. And again, last week I attended a meter swap, and the utilities electrical engineer was there, and he said, this is safe. And I said, you're an electrical engineer? And he said, yes. And I said, what's the frequency of your antenna, that one antenna? He said 900 megahertz. I said 900 million cycles a second. He said, yes. I said, what happens when you mix that with 8.3 hertz? And he said, well, you're going to get major harmonics. Yeah. I was referring to 8.3 hertz of the brain. We're not electrically, Jim. You can imagine. You know this, people. You guys take your radio station. You go off that channel, that frequency, by just a little bit. You can't hear it anymore. So when you think about when as soon as listen, even doctors that said to me, Curtis, the brain drops to a half a hertz during sleep or something. I said, so imagine Wi-Fi having a rest or doing those types of things. 2.45 billion cycles per second interacting with an 8.3 hertz brain of your child or the teacher or a developing fetus.
That's basic alpha rhythm, and it's basic human resonance. So you got several natural things going here too.
Yeah, Curtis, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I haven't had a chance to tell Sandy yet, but I have one doctor for sure, and maybe two, who are willing to be interviewed on this program about the brainwave frequencies and how they are affected. and how, and I think part of the reason why people gloss over when I talk to them is they don't want to hear how bad it is, and they bring up, well, what about the units for chronic pain, the TENS units?
Yeah.
They heal people, so all electricity can't be bad. I mean, there are people walking around with pacemakers, so all electricity can't be bad. So they don't want to hear the bad stuff. They are more than happy to. I mean, my mother got hooked up to a pacemaker a year ago. At 98, they didn't want to put one in her because she was so old, but she said, I want to live. So they put one in, and she feels a lot better. So there are the brainwave. It's delta deep restorative sleep is 0 to 0.4, as you noted, or 0 to 4 hertz. And we need that level of inactivity of electromagnetic field in order to have deep restorative sleep. And for us to move the human canaries who are really debilitated out of a very low, we want people to move up to 10. So if they're down around 2 or 3, the first thing they need is deep restorative sleep. Yeah. And that can be interrupted by smart meters or the digital clocks, or all the things you mentioned on your very generous website, Curtis. It's really a wonderful website.
Well, that's what I mean. It's horrible, and here again is why this is important. They didn't tell doctors. They didn't tell insurers. Insurers they're misdiagnosed. Imagine a child going in, and I just think about this when I'm dealing with doctors. I said, you cannot leave out their electromagnetic environment diagnosis without exception.
But they
I
can.
said, here's what. Well, they can't. They can't because they are, but they can't because, like they said in this quote here, you're neurologically interfering with them. But not only that, their hormonal and immune systems, and to not know that's happening. They don't
tell people who get radiation treatment that the radiation is going to eventually cause cancer if they live long enough. They're using pulsed frequency to treat depression. And when it comes to using TENS machines, the latest studies show with athletes that later in life they are developing cancer from use of the TENS machines. There's a direct correlation. So there is always, or almost always, some unintended consequence. But we know about pulse frequency. The government knows about pulse frequency. They know that even HAARP had the ability to affect people's brains on a mass scale, the same way that Dr. Becker had given the information even about the towers, the Gwen towers. Well, they stopped doing that because now they can do it on a massive scale with satellites.
They don't have to use HAARP anymore. They can interfere with them with Wi-Fi. They can
but
do
there
it
are
with
20 of them around the world. So
well, let's keep in mind the corporations have been doing a great job for some decades now, buying up everything on shielding they possibly can and all the different frequencies. So, and there's all kinds of shielding devices you can get from less EMF that helps in the present situation. But this is a worldwide problem right now. One thing to remember is we've had these problems all along, but they've never been so widespread. The mercury, the lead, the triethylstilbestrol, and all, there's all kinds of chemicals and stuff. It took a while until health stress overcame the toxic load that these people had to have them have a problem. And then they were able to do something about it, smoking, for example, and some other things.
Yeah, but we're getting sprayed like rats every day with metals. So, of course, between the frequency and the metals, we're going to have a problem. I mean, we're like one big giant magnet. I mean, I'm a walking antenna. All I have to do is go near a radio.
I wanted to bounces off anything conductive.
Actually, that's the way our central nervous system is designed. Our central nervous system appears to be the physical brain, but in fact the mind goes well beyond the bony skull, and it actually functions as an antenna. And we know that we have eyes and ears for two levels of the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light and audible sound, but we probably also have antennas and receivers and senders for other points on the electromagnetic spectrum. It's just that the heart definitely is picking up things. So we all are antennas, and, I think if one thing that I try to do with people is just have people be more conscious of what they are experiencing. That's a place to begin, and whatever they experience on the subtle level, because this is subtle, this is invisible to a lot of people, it's still in their unconscious sensing system. And that's the place that I try to find the common ground with people, that they can experience things. And it's been phenomenal since the full lunar eclipse and the 2 earthquakes on both sides of the Ring of Fire, the Pacific tectonic plate. A lot more people, because I've been talking about this for a long time. I just quietly send out the NASA alerts for the full moon, and there's earthquake alert and there's volcano alert. So in the past month, there have been major geoelectromagnetic shifts. I mean, our Earth has been shifting below our feet, and over Labor Day, we had solar flares. So we've been in a sandwich. We've been the meat in the middle of an electromagnetic sandwich. So I believe people are waking up, and so I'm so glad that those people who have done this very deep, technical, persistent, careful documentation over the years, that we have this to now share with people, that more people are willing to listen.
And also I wanted to add another person to the conference call, Karen, but before I do that, I would like to ask everybody, I'm going to send you all the conference tape. If you can send that out to anybody and everybody you know, this is a very important conference, so that perhaps it'll wake up more people. So I wanted to add Karen.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you,
great.
Sandy. I want to encourage other people to do that also. I've been sending out. I'll send out this tape, and I sent out the woman who's working to get the legislation passed in Massachusetts through Deborah Davis's good work. People are so grateful to get that. Thank you.
Okay, and Karen,
you guys remember this?
Down unmuted. You had your hands up. I hope hope
okay,
you're.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask Curtis or Dianne, do they have any information that about regulations that are comparable to the Canadian one that we can quote if we go to court here, or try to do some action to the what is it, Safety Code 6 or whatever it is? Is there something comparable to it that's here in the U.S. with the same?
I'd actually like you to, if you could, I'd like you to email me on this, because here's a reality when you talk about, with Sandy and confirming this. When buildings are non-compliant with code, that means you can't occupy them. So here's an example in eastern Canada. Ontario has put in 4.8 million smart meters. So from an engineering perspective, that means you've got 4.8 million buildings that aren't compliant with building code. And you're going to have tax problems. You're going to have real issues. So now we're talking about auditor generals and attorney generals and auditor generals that look after the government. And again, yesterday I want to tell people where a woman said the police told her this is a civil matter, and I said, you take this to the RCMP. I said, here's what you do. You give this to them, and you explain to them about this tase across your property line. So if you send us an email, we can give you more information, because here's the same thing. The FCC uses the same science. And here's for the people out there, and Liz Barris and whoever else is doing this illegal stuff. The FCC has to bring in the plastic head with water in it and substantiate it as science. And then they have to admit that they left out the antennas and they weren't incorporated, where the lawyer gets to say no, causation is the antennas and the Wi-Fi routers and the smart grid and biological plausibility. You're going to take that into court. The other side has to show a judge a plastic head with water in it and say, Your Honor, this is a science we're using to support how safe this is. The law is on your side. You can't vibrate buildings like this. You can't. And here's the thing is, you can't tase people. Some people, listen, I'd like to do it myself. But guess what? You can't tase people. The utility can't fire EMFs across your property line and tase you. I did a call with a deputy sheriff and a marshal, and And she said, what would you call it? And I said, what would you call it? And she said, they're assaulting us with a deadly weapon. I said, yes. And asking doctors this, and imagine having this conversation when SIDS rates were up 30% in the province of British Columbia, to say to a doctor, to say, what is your nervous system doing? They said, that's your electrical system for your body. And I said, could triggering a nerve on a vulnerable baby stop it from breathing? Yes. Could triggering a nerve on a vulnerable senior trigger it? Yes. On a pacemaker? Yes. Imagine this, you're told to stay 2 feet. Pacemaker manufacturer specs say to stay 2 feet away from an induction oven. But Fortis BC, as an example, admitted one of our antennas covers 1.8 miles or 9,800 feet. But they didn't clear that with anybody, they just did it. This is what I mean, this is so illegal. Did you clear this with the health authority, the guys putting in the pacemakers? No. Do you think you should talk to those pacemaker guys? And Jim, you imagine this even when I cross-examined the electrical engineer and I said, you're blasting those highly penetrating EMFs everywhere. I said, can't you induce a charge on something? And I said, you're going to cause a fire or an explosion? And even for him to say, well, it's possible, but it's not probable. Of course it's possible. And then, Jim, you think about these classed areas that, when we wire refineries, when we wire these highly classed areas where there's gas, where just a spark can cause an explosion, we have to actually contain the explosion. Well, you're 100% right. Now imagine this. They bombard the area with radio frequency EMFs for ease of communication. You're going to induce a charge on something. And all it's going to take is somebody's going to touch something. You're going to get a static discharge. And even our utility here, imagine this. They didn't tell their gas workers. And Jim, even when I talked to their gas workers, I said, what are you doing? I said, when you're working on a gas leak, what's going on? He said, that gas is moving at 300 PSI. And I said, that can set off an explosion. And he said, yes. And then you think of somebody wearing gear or somebody's wearing something fuzzy where all of us have done that static discharge thing. That's exactly what can happen in these environments and just blow the place up for real. But you try to just bounce up.
This is all very disturbing.
They have the gas pump.
Could I have the email address? Sorry.
And here's what I do too. Here's what I do.
I just want to say, I think that I have to say this is that we have to end soon because I think that people are going to be, very interested in hearing the tape. But I think that we have to end it because we do. So, what was the email for you?
Thermoguide here. Thermoguy.com. THERMOGUY.com. Even if you sign up for the newsletter, and it doesn't matter who you are. I've told radio frequency executives, hey, you know what? You don't want to kill your own family either. So, here's an email there. Just use the email address that's there and send that to us because, listen, this is a very serious issue. You can't blow up refineries. You can't blow up places. Insurers aren't going to pay for it. Lawyers aren't going to lay down. And they will be criminally liable like you or me would. That's it.
Okay. I think that's a good way of ending it because that's really true. They're going to be liable and everybody's in danger for this. But I wanted to thank you, Curtis Bennett and Dianne Knight, for being our guests on this show, a very important show. And I would suggest everybody sending a copy of this conference call to everybody they know and put it on Facebook or wherever you can. Yes.
And a real trip.
What?
We got to stop this assault.
Heavy duty, a real trip. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Dianne. Thank you, everybody. I think that we have to make these a little shorter and cram the information in so people will listen to this because this is so important. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.